there's been a death threat. We've been tipped off. We've got to have to escort you all the way to Leeds. I said, is that necessary? He said, well, yes, for your own safety. And people in the supermarket would shout at me or swear at me or threaten to shoot me or kill me or whatever. By order of the police, I had to have security living with me for a few months. And it was a Barrie Pierpoint versus Martin O'Neill. Well, I couldn't be versus Martin because Martin wasn't involved in the problems in the boardroom.
So with me is Barrie Pierpoint, the first chief executive of Leicester City, a man who worked for almost a decade at Filbert Street, enjoyed plenty of highs before a very messy departure. The story is told in this book. How would you briefly sum up the 1990s for you and for Leicester? It seemed never a dull moment.
Well, I would sum it up from coming into the club in 1991 as being like a prehistoric animal, very old, antiquated, old-fashioned. And when I went out at the year 2000, across that 9-year period, it was a club that was going places. So, it was like going in the dark ages in 1991 to becoming a polished Premiership football club towards the year 2000 when I left. So that's how I would say, in a very quick nutshell, dark ages, Premiership.
Give us a sense of how bad the club was being run in terms of business when you came in, and how did the turnover compare to when you left?
Well, when I first came in, the club was obviously turning over about 1 or 2 million pounds. Wasn't much profit in there because they had to sell players to keep the club afloat. The idea of me coming in was to develop all the commercial opportunities and build the business side of the football club. And there was no structure, there was no marketing plan, there wasn't even a business plan, to be honest. And I started with a blank sheet of paper. Very old club, very old-fashioned, no modern sort of approaches at all, and very much no can-do attitude.
Mm. One thing which stands out in the book, Barrie, is that you don't display real bitterness about the way things ended. It just seems more of a disappointment.
Well, I think life's about experiences and life's about achievements. And I don't hold any bitterness about anything, because what happened. It just happened in the wrong way. I think, unfortunately, my departure was more to do with the media and putting the wrong information in the press, as opposed to what really did happen. And the fans, and let's face it, any fans would want to just read in the papers and believe what they're told. The fans didn't know what happened behind the scenes. Nobody knew what happened behind the scenes except the people that were there, who were in that boardroom when all that bust-up happened in that September, in 1999.
Mm. Well, Martin O'Neill came in at the tail end of 95. Things kind of changed for you then, didn't they?
Well, bear in mind, I had a good rapport with Brian Little and a good rapport with Mark McGee, even though he was only there for about 12 months. I got on very well. It was a shame, really, because I've never met Martin, and Martin only met me for a short time. I introduced myself to him. I told him, what I was there to do to support him and help him. And for some unknown reason, and I don't understand today, he just didn't want anything to do with me. He just told me, keep away, and he didn't want anything to do with me. And I didn't understand why. But then I began to realise that we did have 1 or 2 people in the club who were mischievous, nasty people who were not only giving me grief before Martin arrived, but during the course of the time he was there. And I think what happened was, I think people got to Martin before he got to speak to me, and I think they painted a very black picture of me. Bear in mind I was successful, and bear in mind that I won awards and all sorts of things I'd done for that club. I think together Martin and I would have made a powerful team of people, that we would have been worked well together. I had no intention, and I don't know why people keep saying it, I had no intention of running the football team, picking players or buying players, because I wouldn't have a clue what to do, and I've always said that all along. For some unknown reason, the press and in the club, there was this thing about Barrie Pierpoint wants to run the football team. Well, he didn't, because he didn't know anything about football. People keep telling me that. So, that was a technical job, and Martin was the technical guy for doing that. I was a business guy, and I knew about growing businesses. So that was a shame because we never really got off on the right footing. We never really spoke properly. We never sat down and had meetings. And it was almost as if, he avoided me. It was almost as if I'd done something wrong to him. It was almost as if, I'd created a problem, but there was no problem to create because I didn't know the guy. I'd never met him. But when I did meet him for the first time, I wasn't met with what I was expecting.
Fans obviously see what's on the pitch as the most important thing, and Martin O'Neill doing a fantastic job. And if we take you back to that time when fans were holding up Pierpoint out banners, they wanted one of the senior off-field people to get out of the club. They were chanting negatively about you. How did you feel when you were sitting in the stadium and you were hearing that and you were seeing the banners?
Well, it was difficult because one particular Saturday, and I think it was the first Saturday where they had the banners, I'd had some guests there who were basically business people who were going to invest in the club and wanted to be part of the club and put some money into the club. Because most of the time I was trying to get business people to put money into the club, become investors, become presidents, vice presidents, all the different sort of things that we did to attract large amounts of money. And there I was sitting in the stadium on the Saturday watching that particular match, and to have my name banded around and all those posters. And I thought to myself, do those people really know why they're doing that? What was the meaning behind that? Because they didn't know why they was doing it. They didn't know what had gone off. They'd only read what was in the press or what was told in the press. And I still believe that some of the people in the club who didn't like me, didn't want me there, and I had one director who I tried to pay me off at one point, offering me a large sum of money to go because he didn't want me there. Well, I can only imagine that these people were creating unnecessary problems for me and really were going to drive me out. That's what I was thinking. But I was more embarrassed for my guests than myself. I mean, I'm a strong character and I can stand all that. And, when you're in a job like that at a football club where passion and people and results can work for you or against you, then, it's not a normal, typical job, is it? It's not the typical sort of job going to an office. You're working in the football club. And, I can imagine what Martin felt like when he was been at the club only for a few months and he had all the crowns on his back because he wasn't getting the results in the early days he was there. And he, too, wasn't very happy. And I can remember going to the car park and standing there talking to fans and saying, give the guy a chance, please give a bit more time. People want magic. They want instant results. So it was difficult, Geoff. I didn't like it. I didn't think I deserved it. And I didn't think I created the problem. But when I found out that, people like the people in the club and also a local newspaper was producing these, then I think they were at fault for enticing and encouraging that to go further. The problem is the dispute that was in the boardroom should never have rolled into the public domain. It should have stayed in the boardroom and it should have been discussed. But one or two people who resigned on that day wanted to go out there and have a lovely media circus event, and that's what they got.
Of course, when it was pitched as you and the so-called gang of four against Martin O'Neill, there was only going to be one winner, and things kind of escalated, didn't they? Because you got pulled over by the police on the way to a game. What happened?
Well, I was going to Leeds, driving on the M1, and I got Richard Hughes, one of my colleagues, with me. And we were going up the M1, and I was stopped. I got flashing lights behind me, and I thought, oh, am I speeding? Because I don't like driving fast, But I mean, I wasn't doing more than 70, and I got this police car that pulled me over halfway up the M1, and I thought, I don't know what I've done wrong, but anyway, so I opened the window and I said, anything wrong, officer? He said, are you Barrie Pierpoint, the chief executive of Leicester City Football Club? I said, yes, I am. Why? He said, well, there's been a death threat. We've been tipped off. We've got to have to escort you all the way to Leeds. I said, is that necessary? He said, well, yes, for your own safety. And I said, well, I don't particularly want that. And he said, well, it is for your own safety. And this police car escorted me all the way to Leeds and into the ground as well. But then after that, I did have problems when I was shopping. If I was in the supermarket, people recognised me because, let's face it, my picture was on every newspaper, national, it was on every local newspaper. I was constantly on the radio for, weeks on end with all this going on. And people in the supermarket would shout at me or swear at me or threaten to shoot me or kill me or whatever. I just ignored it. One or two people sympathised and said, "You don't deserve it. I don't know why this has happened." And, but it was difficult times. I had a mother of 80 in Nottingham who was, not well. And, it affected her more than me.
It's mad to think that people would go to those kind of extremes. I'm just wondering, when you look back now, how messy and particularly how sad was it to end your time at the football club in that way? Because you had so many positive memories across the previous years.
I think the worst thing for me was when I was at home. I lived at Ravenstone in Leicestershire, and I was at home, and I had to have, by order of the police, I had to have security living with me for a few months. And I don't know if you've ever, it's very strange having somebody in your house day and night when you're there, going to bed and you've got security staff sitting in your front room or in your kitchen or whatever. I mean, that was the most difficult for me because I'd had a brick through my window at one point and people knew where I lived. And, to go home and to worry about, is anybody going to break in and, finish me off, that is a worry. And to have security people there day and night, watching your house when you're not there and watching the house when you're in there or being in the house with you, I found that quite stifling and quite difficult. And here I am doing a job, and it's only a job, and, if there was a big bust up in the car park and I'd punch somebody, one of the directors, or punch any of the players or the managers, I can understand the people being on the back. But that never happened. And it's all this media frenzy that got out of control. And it was a Barrie Pierpoint versus Martin O'Neill. Well, I couldn't be versus Martin because Martin wasn't involved in the problems in the boardroom. It was a few directors and other directors. So it all got blown out of proportion. The two directors who had resigned, the two chairmen, the PLC chairman, the football chairman, should have come back into the room or met with us like we asked them to do, and they should have ironed all these issues out. There was a lot of tension in the club, though, Geoff, for quite some time. There wasn't a lot of tension because the football chairman tended to run the football club on his own. He didn't consult other directors, and then other directors were getting frustrated and fed up because they were not consulted about buying players, selling players, and so on. And all that went on for quite some time. And there was a lot of tension leading up to that boardroom meeting on September 1999.
Would you like to name any names now?
I don't think it's necessary to name names because I've always said along that, I'm not here to knock people and take people off. I've mentioned the titles of the positions. I think I didn't mention names. I think, it happened. It should never have happened. And I think it sold a lot of newspapers, and I think it gave people the wrong impression. And since my book's been out, Geoff, it's surprising how many people who thought I was a bad guy begin to realise that perhaps I wasn't as bad as what people made me out to be. And they understood what I did. And that's good for me today, that people recognise the fact that it wasn't all Barrie Pierpoint's fault. When I did 8 years of goodness, and I did very well, and I had 4 months of hell.
Now, Brian Little was getting it right on the pitch in the early mid-90s. You were getting it right off the pitch. How did you two get on?
Well, Brian came just after I did. I came in the April, Brian came in the May. And one thing I did with Brian was I sat him down and said, "Look, Brian, what's your plans? And this is what I want to do." And to be fair, lots of the things that I wanted to do would involve Brian and would involve the team. I mean, we had a problem with our kit supplier. We had Bukta at the time, and Bukta kit was poor quality. We had a contract that I wasn't happy with. We got a few grand out of it. Another thing is people kept bringing all their old kit back and saying it got faults in it because Bukta were selling seconds of our kit, to other people in the area. They were coming back asking for a full refund. So we had a problem with that. And I said to Brian, look, we're never going to get the Adidas's, and we're never going to get, and I tried to get some of the big names to come and, you know, be our kit supplier. I'm not interested in Leicester at the time. I said, why don't we do our own? And I said to Brian, let's try our own. Let's have our own brand. Because I was seeing all these kids walking around in Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool shirts on in Leicester. And I thought, well, they ought to be wearing what we want. So we created Fox Leisure. Brian was instrumental in that. He was very keen to see it happen. We made sure the players were happy. We got a local company in. We checked all the fabrics and materials. The players were happy to wear them. We even got the fans involved in the idea. So everybody was consulted. And that's one of the things I maintained, Geoff, consultation with fans and public and everybody else. It was important in that club. And that's what I did. And that Fox Leisure was born. And it was about quality, standards, value for money. And we created that new brand. We created all the leisure wear, all the shirts, the kit. And Brian was instrumental, and Brian was very pleased with it. And so was I. And so were the players. And you can remember, Fox Leisure took off. I mean, you know, we had the best years of the first year we launched it. We had all the players actually, you know, modelling the shirts and modelling the kit. And it was successful. And that was the start of that particular journey of Fox Leisure. And Brian was instrumental all the way. I got on very well with Brian. We never had a crossword. We always worked together. We talked to each other, had a laugh and a joke. We shared each other's. I never got involved with the football team. I mean, that's his job. But everything I want to do commercially, where it involved the players and Brian, then I would talk to him first.
I was at Radio Leicester when you first came into the football club. And I remember thinking, here's a big guy, no shrinking violet, big colourful glasses and ties, a no-nonsense approach. You came across as a, and I mean this in a nice sense, you came across as a very flashy character. It was, the club was quite grey at the time. You brought a lot of colour to the place.
Well, I went for about 6 interviews. I think in the book I mentioned about the interviews. I went almost to the point where I went somewhere else before I came to Leicester City. I got to Leicester City by accident. But people remembered me. I was talking to a director the other week who's got a copy of the book. He said to me, 1 or 2 of the directors were frightened of you, didn't want to employ you because we thought you was too flashy, too colourful and too outstanding. And I said, well, and he said to me, well, that's what 1 or 2 of us thought we needed. We wanted somebody to come in there, pick the thing up, shake it, and put something, you know, put some plans into action and make things happen. And I went in there, Geoff, honestly, I had blue glasses, blue shirt, blue suit, blue socks, and even blue underpants to match, and a blue tie. And, you know, when I saw them the second time round or third time, it was green lit, or it was, you know, different colours. So everything was coordinated, but people never forgot me. They always remembered me. The good thing about it is I said I was going to do something, and I said I would do it, and I did it, and I delivered.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's nearly 30 years on now. And you look back at things like Fox Leisure, the clothing brand, the various things that you sold in the stores, family night football, getting 15, 20,000 people in for a reserve team football was incredible. And of course, there was the building of the Carling stand as well. When you look back, what do you see as the biggest achievements?
I think the biggest achievement for me was the Carling stand, because we had an old member stand, as you know, and it was falling to bits. It was held up with chewing gum and string. And, you know, people were fed up with it. Other football clubs were having new stadiums built, having new stands built. Leicester was so far behind the times. And one of the jobs and tasks for me was to raise enough money to build a new stand. Well, bear in mind, I'd come out of industry. I'd never had to raise £5 or £6 million before. And to go and find £5 or £6 million with the football club in the early days when I first started there, telling people about the vision of the club, people told me to go home and said, you know, you're wasting your time, and, you know, fancy coming to work over here, and oh, Leicester's never going to go anywhere, and all that sort of stuff. And that was said to me quite frequently. I never ever got you know, disheartened. I always thought, right, I'm going to show these people that we can make things happen. And I'm a person that does deliver, and I will do it, even though it was bloody hard, may I say. And I had a few hurdles, many hurdles to overcome and climb. I got there in the end. But this Carling stand was the showpiece of Leicester. It was built on a very But 9,000 seats, all those executive boxes, all the facilities inside for maximising both match days and non-match days. And the problem was it was so good. People wanted to be in there, and within 2 or 3 years, we paid for it. We wanted to pay for it over a 7-year period. We paid for it within 2 or 3. I mean, we did raise, £6 million, and that was because people believed in what we were doing. I remember one guy, unfortunately, he's passed away now. I won't mention his name, but he gave me a cheque for 75,000 quid. He said, "Barry, I like what you're doing. I like the drawings. I can see the new calling stand. I'll buy a box. I'll pay you for 5 years in the £75,000 cheque." He gave me a cheque there and then.
Wow. I mean, the executive boxes in the newsstand were very nice and were very popular.
Well, there was an instance once when I was walking down all the executive boxes because I was very keen to make sure that the place was tidy and clean. I never wanted to see any rubbish or boxes on the floor or anything left lying around. But I did walk down the corridor one particular day in the week, and I heard this huge banging noise on the door. And I walked further down, and this door was bang, bang, bang. I thought, there's something in this little cubby old room. So I listened a bit. There was a few grunts and a few groans, and I opened the door, and a couple fell out, and they were just having it off. Really pleased as punch to. And I said to them, "What's going off here?" And somebody said to me, the guy said, "We're having a stock take." I said, "I think it's more like a bit of cocktail, Anyway, those two people were brought down to my office and were given a very harsh warning. Happens again, on your bike.
Mm. Why did you decide that now was kind of the right time to, put your words together for the book?
Well, it wasn't my idea because, people often spoke to me, Geoff, over the years about writing a book. And I've been too busy doing other things. I hadn't got the inclination, I hadn't got the time. And where did I start? And it's only because a guy called Matthew Mann, who's obviously a very ardent football fan, and was a young lad when I was at Filbert Street as the CEO.
We were all young lads back then.
Well, even I was a young lad then. And he obviously read about me, and he read all the things and did some research and approached me in the September 2019 and said, I think you ought to write a book. And I said, well, I've thought about it many times, but I haven't got the time. He said, well, I'll do it. I said, well, if you do it, it's got to be on 2 conditions. And the 2 conditions were very clear. One is I didn't want it to be a Barrie Pierpoint Appreciation Society. And 2, I certainly didn't want it to be a book about slagging people off or having a go at people or, really putting daggers in people. So that was the 2 conditions. And I said to Matthew, providing you keep away from those 2 things, I'll do the book. The other thing is I want as many people as possible in that book who was in the 90s, whether it be fans, whether it be players, directors, staff, journalists, whoever, go and find them and let's write an interesting book about the success and the achievements in the 90s. And that's what that book was all about. And that's why I'm happy to be associated with it, because I believe that the timing was right and I believe that the story is right.
Yeah, you've got managers in there, as you say, players, people who were on the board, people that you did business with, journalists, etc., and there's a lot of positivity towards and warmth towards you, Barry, from them. What did that mean to you?
Well, I've always put myself out for people, Geoff, and I've always been one of these people that go out their way to serve people, because my job is about providing service, making sure people are happy, helping people. The players often came to me for, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? The directors did the same. Staff, I always do motivate the staff and work very closely with them. My job was to keep people happy, give good service, and make sure the club is running professionally and properly as a business, as it is, and as it still is now. And it's a big business now. So, I was there to make sure things got done and make sure things happened.
Did it surprise you after you left when the club got into financial trouble? Because obviously there was administration. The club was in danger of being liquidated. Well,
it was a sort of, don't forget, we were a PLC. We floated in '97. And we're a PLC for a reason, because we ain't got enough money to buy players. Martin wanted some players, and you have to spend money to buy players. And the directors were all, before it was floated, were all independent, and some had money, some hadn't. And so therefore, it was the general feeling that because those who couldn't put money in and those who could, they weren't going to put any money in. So we had to go down the flotation route. We were very late in doing the flotation route, because the bigger clubs like your Villas and your Newcastle United were all doing it and getting big investors. We were at the tail end. So we managed to raise £12 million to put into the football club. But the trouble was, as a PLC company, and nobody understands this, you have shareholders, and the fans were shareholders as well as business people. We had to be, I had to be, as a CEO, I had to be trained on corporate governance. I had to go on director training programs to make sure I ran a professional business, public limited company. But some of the directors in that company just carried on as if it was still part of a family concern and individual people. They did not know what corporate governance was. They didn't really care about corporate governance, and they just wanted to do what they wanted to do. And then those people who carried on after the four of us had gone, they are the ones responsible for taking the club down the pan. Irresponsible spending, irresponsible management, irresponsible budgeting, irresponsible operating.
What do you think of the club now, Barry? The owners, the journey it's been on, and where the club is heading?
Well, I always think that, when I went, and I'm sorry to talk about the bit that went wrong, but after, I believe that my legacy that I left was a springboard into other things. Unfortunately, the people who carried on, took the club down the pan. But, generally the club had lifted up. I think today, the owners that we've got today, I think they're very superior. And I was saying this the other day in another interview, that they've not only invested in the football club and the team and the management, they've also invested in the training ground centre. They've also invested in the city of Leicester. They've also invested in the university. They've also invested in the fans. They've invested in everything in Leicester. They haven't taken anything out. They've put everything in. It must have cost them a fortune. Other people, big investors with cash to splash into football clubs, tend to put it in and then start taking it out again. So you don't really get the benefit of that investment. They either get fed up because their money's been lost, or they get fed up with the fact that football is just a one big black hole and it just keeps losing money. So this club is very fortunate. The fans are so lucky to have the people they've got today, and it's very sad about the chairman who died a couple of years ago. But the fans are very lucky to have what they've got today, because they've got people that really mean investing in the club, putting money into the club and seeing it go further and further and further. And one thing I can say, Geoff, is that they're going to build more, I think, on the current stadium. And now the current stadium is a 32,000 seater. I wanted a 40,000 seater when I was there on Bede Island, and that was poo-pooed by one or two of the people who didn't like Barrie Pierpoint. And I said to them, we will need that longer term. And I was right, because we do need that facility now because of where the club is today. And I think Leicester's a different ball game. I think Leicester can only go up and up and up. And I really do admire the people who put all that money in and the owners today, because the fans are lucky. If I'd got that today, then, I tell you what, we would be quids in.
Mm. What are you up to now? Are you still doing the same kind of stuff, PR, consultancy, marketing?
I do a lot of things. I'm the non-exec director of some businesses where I go in there and advise and help and grow businesses and help them turn them around and recruit people and restructure them. I'm also involved in consultancy work where I coach people and train people and develop people. I'm also involved with universities where I coach students as well. So I'm doing lots of things, really, lots of interesting things. I do a bit of charitable work as well. So I'm quite mixed at the moment. I keep my hands in to most things. The book kept me busy because it's been a year. It took a year to write that book. I mean, Matthew has a heart of gold and patience like nobody's done it, because I wouldn't have the patience to do what he's done. I mean, to spend a year writing a book and to sit and talk to me most days and then go and interview lots of other people, including you, to find out what happened, that the man must be a genius, because he has written a very good book. It's really written very well.
And you're getting good feedback on it?
Massive feedback, excellent interest. It's a book really not just for football fans. It is for football fans. It's for people also in business. It's also a book about the history of Leicester in the 90s. So anybody who wasn't born then could read about what happened in those days. And people are coming back to me with feedback, and I'm getting it all the time, what they've learned, how interesting it was, behind the scenes stuff. I mean, there's some funny things in there. There was a chairman, who somebody crapped in his desk drawer and left a nice big turd in there. You remember?
Mm. Did you ever find out who did it? Who left it?
Oh, we know who did it, but we can't say that. It was anyway. That was an interesting one. But there's lots of other things in there. Lots of other things that I couldn't even print. I'd like to put in there, but the lawyer said not.
Barry, listen, it's been great to relive some of the memories from all the old days. Wish you every success with the book, and hopefully catch up with you in person soon.
Take care. God bless.